Look at this mess. We can't keep living like this.
I know, but yelling won't help. We need a plan.
A plan, we need money, not excuses. We'll get through this, I promise.
It was a Thursday night in November. Not a dramatic Thursday, not a special one. Just a cold, ordinary Thursday that smelled like fast food wrappers and old coffee. The kind of night that has no business changing your life forever, and yet it does. Chase was 34 years old. He had a job he didn't hate, a wife he loved more than he knew how to say, and a Ford F-150 that was 3 payments behind. He'd been telling himself for 6 months that he would figure it out. That phrase, figure it out, had become the wallpaper of his inner world. It was everywhere. It covered everything. And like wallpaper, it was hiding all the cracks in the foundation. Megan was 32. She was the kind of woman who color-coded her grocery lists and cried at insurance commercials, and still somehow managed to be the most practical person in every room she walked into. She had a master's degree in education, a mortgage she'd co-signed with a man she trusted completely, and a secret she'd been carrying for 4 weeks. She had looked at their bank account on a Tuesday afternoon while Chase was at work, and she hadn't been able to breathe right since. That Thursday night, Chase picked her up from her sister's house. They stopped at a drive-thru because neither of them had the energy to cook. They sat in the parking lot of a Wendy's with a bag of food going cold between them, and Megan pulled out her phone. "I need you to look at something," she said. Her voice was quiet, not angry quiet, not cold quiet. It was the quiet of someone who has rehearsed this moment 100 times and still has no idea how to begin. Chase looked at the screen. The balance in their joint checking account was $47.16, and it was the 15th of the month. They had 16 days left until the next paycheck. A mortgage payment due in 4 days, a car insurance renewal coming in 2 weeks, a water bill that had been snoozed twice already, and $47.16. Chase didn't say anything. He looked at the number like a man trying to make sense of a foreign language, translating slowly, hoping he had misread it. He hadn't. Megan started crying first. Not sobbing, just the quiet, unstoppable kind of tears that come when the feeling has been dammed up for too long, and suddenly the dam just gives out. She wasn't crying because they were broke. She was crying because she was terrified. Terrified that this was as good as it was going to get. Terrified that they had made all the right choices, worked all the right jobs, said all the right vows, and somehow still ended up sitting in a fast food parking lot on a Thursday night in November, staring at $47. And then Chase started crying too, not because of the number, not entirely. He cried because he looked at his wife, this woman he had promised to build a life with, and he realized she had been carrying this fear alone. He hadn't known. He hadn't asked. He had been figuring it out in his head for 6 months, while she had been drowning in the silence of knowing. They sat there for 45 minutes. The food got cold. A couple walked past with a stroller and glanced at the truck and kept moving. The parking lot lights hummed overhead. And in that truck, in that parking lot, something happened that neither of them could have predicted. They didn't fight. They didn't blame each other. They didn't reach for their phones to distract themselves. They just sat there together in the wreckage of the financial life they had accidentally built, and they made a decision. Not a plan. Not yet. Just a decision. They decided that this was the last time. This was the last Thursday night in a parking lot. The last time they would go to sleep pretending the problem wasn't there. The last time Figure It Out would be allowed to live rent-free in Chase's head without a deadline attached to it. 18 months later, their savings account had over $22,000 in it. Their credit card debt was gone. Their mortgage was no longer something they whispered about. And on a Saturday morning in May, they booked a trip to Portugal, paid in cash. And Megan laughed so hard she cried all over again. This is the story of how they got from that parking lot to that morning. And I promise you, if you stay with me through this entire video, you are going to see something in this story that looks exactly like your life. And when you do, you are going to understand that the distance between where you are right now and where you want to be is not as impossible as it feels on a Thursday night in November. Let's go back to the beginning. Chase grew up in a house where money was a locked door. His father worked in construction. His mother worked at a pharmacy. They made enough, just enough, And just enough was the ceiling, the floor, and all four walls of what Chase understood about financial life. Money came in, money went out. You didn't talk about it at the dinner table because talking about it made it worse. You didn't ask your parents about it because their faces closed like shutters the moment the subject came up. What Chase absorbed, not through lessons but through osmosis, through 1,000 small silences and nervous glances at the mail, was this: money is something that happens to you. You don't control it. You manage it the way you manage bad weather. You put on a coat, you duck your head, you keep moving. Megan grew up differently, but she arrived at the same conclusion through a different road. Her parents were not poor. They were comfortable, comfortably in debt, as she would later understand. There were family vacations and Christmas gifts, and a nice house in a good school district. There were also credit card statements that her mother hid under the bed. There were loans taken against the house that her father never explained. There was the year when Megan was 16 that she came home from school and found her mother sitting at the kitchen table crying, surrounded by bills, and her mother looked up and said, "Don't worry about it, sweetheart. It's just paperwork." It was not just paperwork, but Megan learned to look away. She learned that financial reality was something adults handled privately, in shame, behind closed doors. She learned that the appearance of stability was more important than the stability itself. She learned to perform financial confidence she did not feel. They met at 26. They fell in love fast, the way people do when they recognize something in each other that they cannot yet name. They moved in together at 28. They got married at 30. And they carried all of that unspoken baggage, his father's shuttered silence, her mother's hidden bills, right across the threshold of their first home together, tucked neatly inside the moving boxes, invisible to both of them. The early years were fine, good even. They had 2 incomes. They were careful-ish. They didn't think too hard about the future because the present was manageable and the future felt far away. But debt is patient. Debt doesn't announce itself with sirens and flashing lights. It comes quietly, incrementally, in small and entirely reasonable installments. It comes as the car payment they took on because they needed reliable transportation. It comes as the credit card they opened for the rewards points and then forgot to pay off completely. It comes as the medical bill from the emergency room visit that they put on a card because they were short that month. It comes as the home improvement loan they took out because the roof needed replacing, and what were they supposed to do, let it leak? Each individual decision made sense. Taken together, they were a slow-motion disaster. By the time they were sitting in that Wendy's parking lot, Chase and Megan had a mortgage they were technically keeping up with, but only because they were robbing Peter to pay Paul every single month. They had $11,000 in credit card debt, spread across 3 cards, all of them hovering near their limits. They had a personal loan Chase had taken out 2 years earlier to consolidate other debt, which he had then promptly accumulated again alongside the loan payments. They had a car payment that was 3 months behind. And they had a savings account that contained, at its most optimistic, whatever was left over after everything else had taken its cut, which was lately nothing. They were not broke in the way people picture when they hear the word broke. They had a house, they had 2 cars, they had jobs, they had enough food. To the outside world, they looked perfectly fine. To the inside world, to the 2 people lying in bed at night on opposite sides of a quiet they didn't know how to break, they were drowning. And the drowning didn't happen in one catastrophic moment. That's the part nobody tells you. The drowning happens in the silences. In the way Megan flinched every time her phone buzzed because she thought it might be a creditor. In the way Chase started working late, not because he had extra work, but because the house felt heavy with the weight of everything they weren't saying. In the way they stopped making plans, stopped talking about the future, stopped asking each other, "What do you want?" Because neither of them felt like they had the right to want anything, while the numbers looked the way they did. The intimacy between them, emotional intimacy, the kind that is built from vulnerability and honesty, and the feeling that you are truly known by another person, had slowly been replaced by a performance. They were performing being okay for each other. They were performing stability. And performing is exhausting, and exhaustion over time looks a lot like distance. Money wasn't just a financial problem in their house. It had become the third presence in their marriage. Not a person, something more insidious than a person. A silence, a pressure, a shape in the room that neither of them would name. I want to stop here for a moment, because I know some of you watching this right now are not watching from a place of curiosity. You are watching this because something in the first 2 minutes of this video felt like a punch to the chest. You recognized Chase's silence. You recognized Megan's fear. You recognized that parking lot. Maybe your parking lot was a different location. Maybe it was your kitchen table at midnight. Maybe it was a bathroom floor. Maybe it was a car in the school pickup line while you waited for your kids and ran the numbers in your head for the 100th time that week. You know what I'm talking about. That specific Sunday night insomnia, the kind that has nothing to do with caffeine and everything to do with the mental math that won't stop running. The overdraft fees you're calculating, the bills you're organizing by urgency in your head, while the person you love sleeps beside you, unaware of how loud your thoughts are. That weight. If you know that weight, if money has become the third unwelcome presence in your marriage or your relationship, I want you to do something right now. Scroll down to the comments section and write 2 words, "I'm here." That's it. Just "I'm here." Not because it will fix anything, but because you deserve to stop pretending you're fine, even if it's just in a YouTube comment, even if it's just for a second. And because I want you to see when you look at those comments that you are not alone in this, not even close. Let's get back to Chase and Megan. The Friday after the parking lot night, Chase called in sick to work. He wasn't physically sick. He was the other kind. The kind where you wake up in the morning and the idea of putting on a mask and performing normalcy feels genuinely impossible. He told Megan over breakfast, real breakfast this time, eggs and toast, because after the cry in the parking lot something had softened between them. Some small door had come unstuck. That he was staying home. That he needed a day to think. Megan sat across from him and said, "I think we need to write it all down." He didn't want to. Writing it all down meant seeing it all in one place, and seeing it all in one place meant he couldn't compartmentalize anymore, couldn't tell himself that each piece was manageable on its own. But he knew she was right. He had known she was right for months. The parking lot had simply removed his ability to pretend he didn't know. They cleared the kitchen table. They got out a notepad, the kind with the spiral binding that Megan used for lesson planning, and they sat down across from each other, and they began to write. Every debt, every account, every payment, every balance, every interest rate, every creditor they owed and how much, and for how long. It took 2 hours. When they were done, Chase put down the pen and looked at the page. The total number, added up for the first time in its entirety, was not $47. It was not $11,000. It was not the mortgage. The total number, including everything, the credit cards, the personal loan, the car, the mortgage, was $112,000. He had not known. Not the real number. He had known the pieces. He had not looked at the sum. He sat with that number for a long time. Megan reached across the table and put her hand on his. "Okay," she said. "Now we know." Now they knew. That afternoon, Chase went to the internet. He had gone to the internet before, typed "how to get out of debt" into a search bar at 2 in the morning, and scrolled through the results the way a drowning man flails, grabbing at anything without being able to hold on to anything. But this time was different. This time he wasn't looking for a magic trick. He wasn't looking for something that would make it go away. He was looking for something that would teach him how to walk toward it instead of away from it. He found a video. The video had a modest thumbnail and a title that stopped him cold. "We were $127,000 in debt and almost signed the divorce papers. Then we found the envelope method." He almost kept scrolling. He had seen things like this before. He had been skeptical. But something about that title, the specificity of the number, the rawness of the near divorce, felt real to him in a way that the polished, smiling financial gurus never had. This felt like someone who had been where he was. He clicked play. He watched it twice. Then he called Megan into the room and they watched it together. If you haven't seen that video yet, I want you to watch it immediately after this one. I'm going to tell you how at the end. Because what Chase and Megan learned in that video was the same foundational method that everything else in their story was built upon. But for now, I'm going to tell you what they took from it and what happened when they tried to apply it to their own life. The video introduced them to the envelope method. Now, if you've never heard of the envelope method, here is what it is, and here is why it is not what most people think it is. Most people, when they hear envelopes, think of their grandmother. They think of literal paper envelopes with cash stuffed inside them. They think it sounds quaint, old-fashioned, like something from before credit cards existed. That was exactly what Chase thought when he first heard it. But here is what the envelope method actually does, in its modern, adapted form. It forces you to make every spending decision before the month begins, rather than reacting to spending as it happens. Let me say that again, because it is deceptively simple and profoundly important. Most people manage their money reactively. Money comes in, and then they spend it as needs and wants arise, and at the end of the month they look at what's left over, if anything, and they call that their budget. But that's not a budget. That's a post-mortem. That's counting the casualties after the battle is already over. The envelope method inverts this entirely. At the beginning of each month, before a single dollar is spent, you decide, together, as a couple, looking each other in the eye, exactly where every dollar is going. You assign every dollar a job. Groceries this much, gas this much, eating out this much, entertainment this much, debt repayment this much, savings this much, emergency buffer this much. You divide your monthly income into these categories. Then, and this is the part that changes everything, you stop treating those categories as guidelines and start treating them as non-negotiable boundaries. In the old days, you put cash in physical envelopes to enforce those boundaries, because once the cash was gone, it was gone. In the modern version, you can use separate digital accounts, a budgeting app, a spreadsheet, or yes, still actual envelopes. Whatever makes the boundary feel real to you. The psychological mechanism is this. When you can see exactly how much is allocated to each category, and when that allocation is a decision you made together rather than a number you discovered after the fact, spending becomes a conscious act rather than a passive one. You stop being surprised by where the money went. You know where the money is going because you told it where to go. But Chase and Megan didn't understand all of this on the first watch. What they understood on the first watch was simpler, that another couple had been where they were, that another couple had looked at a terrible number and chosen to face it instead of flee it, and that there was a method, a concrete, learnable method, that had worked for someone else. That was enough to start. They spent that Saturday, the one after the Friday Chase called in sick, at the kitchen table again. This time with their bank statements, their pay stubs, and a new legal pad. They were going to build their first real budget, together, for the first time in 4 years of marriage. It was uncomfortable in a way Chase had not anticipated, not because of the numbers. He had expected the numbers to be painful. What he had not expected was how much the conversation around the numbers would reveal about two people who thought they knew each other completely. Megan wanted to allocate $150 a month for what she called individual money. Money that each of them could spend without accounting for it, without discussion, without judgment. Chase thought this was an extravagance they couldn't afford. Megan thought his resistance to it was a symptom of control, not fiscal responsibility. They argued about it for an hour. In the old version of their marriage, this argument would have ended with one of them going quiet, the door figuratively closing, the subject dropped, and the resentment quietly filed away. But they were both raw from the parking lot, and raw people sometimes have no choice but to be honest. Megan said, "If I don't have some money that is mine, that I don't have to justify to anyone, I will feel like I have no autonomy in this marriage, and I can't live without autonomy." "I can't." Chase sat with that for a long time, then he said, "I feel like we're hemorrhaging money in every direction, and you're asking me to punch another hole in the bucket." "I'm not asking you to punch a hole," she said. "I'm asking you to give the bucket a structure." He didn't fully understand what she meant yet, but he agreed to the $150, $75 each, not because he was convinced, because he trusted her more than he trusted his own fear, and because something in her voice told him that this was not a negotiation about money. It was a negotiation about dignity. They built the budget. It took all day. When they were done, they had a plan. Not a perfect plan, a real one. Their combined monthly take-home income was $6,800. Their mortgage took $1,400. The car payment and insurance took $640. Utilities and phone took $280. Groceries were $350. Gas was $160. Eating out was capped at $100. Individual money was $150 total, $75 each. Minimum payments on all debts took $620. They committed $200 to the emergency fund every single month, without exception. And the remaining $820 became what Megan called the debt attack fund. The money they would throw every month like a weapon at whatever debt they had decided to kill next. It left them with $1,880 that they couldn't immediately account for, and that number was the ghost money. The money that had been disappearing into subscriptions and impulse purchases and gas station snacks and the thousand small invisible places that money goes when you're not watching it. For the first time, they were watching it. The first month was brutal. Not because the budget was wrong, but because living inside a budget when you have never lived inside one before is like wearing a cast on a limb you didn't know was broken. It's uncomfortable. It's constraining. It exposes the habits you didn't realize you had. Chase discovered in the third week of that first month that he had been spending between $200 and $300 a month on things he could not easily categorize. Not large purchases, not memorable ones. Gas station drinks, work lunches that he told himself were cheap, Amazon purchases of under $20 that arrived and were absorbed into the house without ceremony. He had been leaking money in small amounts consistently for years, and he had never seen it because he had never looked. Megan discovered that she had been using retail as emotional regulation, that when she felt anxious or overwhelmed, she had a pattern of buying something small online, something justifiable, something on sale. She wasn't a shopaholic. She had never bought anything extravagant, but she had been buying comfort consistently, and comfort had a tab. These were not easy things to discover about themselves. There was a week, around the 22nd day of that first month, when Chase looked at what was left in the grocery envelope and felt a surge of rage that surprised him. Not at Megan, not at the debt, at the situation, at the constraint, at the fact that he was a grown man who couldn't buy a six-pack of beer without checking a spreadsheet. He went quiet that evening in a way that Megan recognized as dangerous, not dangerous like threatening, but dangerous like retreating. She found him in the garage, sitting on a step stool, doing nothing. She sat down on the concrete floor beside him. "Tell me what you're feeling," she said. "Humiliated," he said. And then he looked at her and said it again, because saying it once had felt too easy, not painful enough to be honest. "I feel humiliated. I make good money. I work hard. And I'm sitting here afraid to buy a beer." Megan was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know what humiliates me? The idea that we keep doing what we've been doing for another 5 years. That terrifies me more than the beer." He laughed. Not a lot. Just enough. They went back inside and they finished the month. They did not spend outside the budget. It was the first month in 4 years of marriage that they could say that. The second month was slightly easier. The third month was easier still. Not because the money got better immediately. The numbers were still tight. The debt was still enormous. The mortgage was still a weight. But because they had developed a new ritual, and the ritual was changing them. Every Sunday evening after dinner, they sat down with the budget. They reviewed the week. They looked at what they had spent against what they had allocated. They talked about what was coming up in the following week, any irregular expenses, any events, anything that might require adjusting. They called it Sunday Review, and it became one of the most intimate parts of their week. Not intimate in the way that word is sometimes used to mean romantic or physical. Intimate in the older, truer sense of the word, close, honest, without performance. Sunday Review was the one time during the week when neither of them was pretending. They were looking at the same numbers, from the same side of the table, working on the same problem. Chase began to notice, around the 4th month, that the weight he had been carrying, that particular specific Sunday night anxiety about money, had diminished, not disappeared, diminished. The numbers hadn't changed enough to justify the relief, but something in knowing, really knowing in concrete detail where they stood, made the fear smaller. The unknown is almost always more terrifying than the known. The known, no matter how bad, is at least something you can plan around. Megan began to notice something different. She noticed that she was buying less. Not because she was being deprived. She still had her $75 of individual money each month, and she spent it freely and without guilt. But the emotional need to buy something small when she was anxious had quieted. She wasn't sure why at first. Then she understood. The anxiety had been in large part financial. She had been medicating a money wound with money spent. Now that the money wound was being treated rather than ignored, the need to medicate it was smaller. This is something I need to say clearly because it matters. The envelope method is not magic. It is not a trick. It is not a shortcut. It is a tool, and like all tools, it requires skill and practice and the willingness to use it imperfectly and then come back and try again. What it did for Chase and Megan, what it does for every couple that takes it seriously, is it created a shared language for money. It gave them a way to talk about it that wasn't accusatory or shameful or secret. It turned money from a locked door into an open conversation. And open conversations, over time, rebuild trust. In month 5, something happened that threatened to derail everything. Chase's truck needed repairs they hadn't seen coming. A failed transmission that the mechanic estimated at $1,800. They didn't have $1,800. Their emergency fund, after 4 months of dedicated contributions, had grown to $800. They were $1,000 short. This was exactly the kind of thing that had always sent them backwards before. An unexpected expense would arrive. They'd put it on a card. The card balance would grow, the minimum payment would increase, and they'd be worse off than before the crisis, plus demoralized, plus tempted to abandon the budgeting entirely because it clearly hadn't protected them from disaster. They sat down on a Sunday evening with this problem in front of them. They had 3 options. Option 1, put it on a credit card, the old way, the way that had gotten them here. Option 2, take from the debt attack fund. They had been aggressively paying down one credit card using an avalanche method, targeting the highest interest card first, throwing every extra dollar at it. And the idea of stopping that momentum felt devastating. Option 3, Chase would take some weekend overtime hours that had been offered at his workplace and he'd been declining. He would take them for 2 months. They would temporarily reduce the debt attack fund contribution by $300 a month and redirect that to replenishing the emergency fund. They would use the emergency fund to cover the shortfall on the truck, and they would put a note in the budget labeled truck buffer as a reminder to never let that emergency fund sit below $1,200 again. They chose option 3. It was slower. It was inconvenient. Chase worked 6 straight weekends and came home tired in a way that made Megan want to tell him to stop, except she couldn't tell him to stop because the plan required it. But they did not touch a credit card. That was the month the shift happened. Not in the budget, but in their identity. They stopped being people who had a budget and started being people who were the kind of people who had a budget. It sounds subtle. It isn't. Identity is the most durable form of behavior change. When Chase said, "We can't do that, it's not in the budget," he was no longer saying it like a man wearing a costume. He was saying it like a man stating a fact about who he was. 12 months after the parking lot, the credit card with the 12% interest rate, the one they had targeted first, the one that had carried a balance of $4,200 when they started, was at 0. Paid off. Closed. Megan had taken a screenshot of the account page showing the 0 balance, and she had sent it to Chase at work with no caption. Just the screenshot. He had stared at it for a full minute before he understood what he was looking at. Then he had gone to the bathroom, into a stall, and stood there for a moment with his hand pressed against his sternum, feeling something he didn't have a clean word for. Not joy, exactly. Something more complicated than joy. More earned than joy. Relief, maybe. but the kind of relief that is indistinguishable from pride. That evening they went to dinner. A real dinner, not fast food, not a drive-through. A restaurant they had been walking past for 2 years and never entered. They ordered what they wanted. They paid with the debit card. They left a real tip. And on the walk back to the car, Chase took Megan's hand. Not in the way you reach for someone's hand out of habit, in the way you reach for someone's hand when you remember why you chose them. Month 15. The personal loan, the one Chase had taken out to consolidate debt and then buried under new debt, was down to its final $4,000. The second credit card had been paid off. Their emergency fund had grown, through consistent contribution and discipline, to $3,200. They had a conversation that month that neither of them had been able to have for years. Megan said, "I want to talk about the future." Chase said, "Okay." She said, "I want to talk about what we want it to look like, not what we can afford, what we want." This was a revolutionary sentence in their household. What we want had been a forbidden concept. Not explicitly forbidden, but practically forbidden, because wanting anything when you can't see a path to it is its own form of cruelty. So they had stopped wanting out loud a long time ago. Now sitting at the kitchen table on a Tuesday evening with cups of tea and the envelope budget spreadsheet open on the laptop between them, they started wanting again. Megan wanted to go back to school part-time to work toward a counseling certification. She had been thinking about it for 3 years and never said it because it cost money, and money was the locked door. Chase wanted to start a small side business. Nothing enormous, just a part-time landscaping operation he could run on weekends, using skills he already had, filling a gap he had noticed in their neighborhood. They wanted, together, to be in a position within 3 years where they had 6 months of expenses saved, where the only debt they carried was the mortgage, where they could take one real vacation per year. Not a fantasy vacation, a real one. Portugal had been on Megan's list since college. Chase had always wanted to see it too. They wrote it all down, not as wishes, as goals, with timelines, with numbers attached, with concrete steps that connected where they were in month 15 to where they wanted to be. That list became the North Star, month 18. It is a Saturday morning in May. The sun is the particular extravagant gold of early summer mornings. Chase is at the kitchen counter making coffee, and Megan is at the table with her laptop open. She has been looking at flights. "Chase," he turns. "Lisbon, round trip, leaving October 3rd, returning October 14th. 2 tickets. She pauses. $840 total. He walks over and looks at the screen. "Can we..." He starts. "We have the travel fund," she says. She had opened a specific envelope months ago labeled Portugal. They had been putting money into it every month. Not a lot, enough. They had been patient. "The fund has $960, she says. He looks at her. She looks at him. He sits down at the table. He takes her laptop, rotates it to face him, and he types in his card number. He completes the purchase. He hits confirm. He slides the laptop back across the table. They look at each other for a long moment without speaking. Then Megan laughs. It starts quiet and then it gets bigger, and she puts her hand over her mouth and her eyes fill up, and Chase is laughing too, leaning forward with his elbows on the table, both of them laughing until there are tears. Not the tears from the parking lot. Different tears. The opposite of those tears. Because the thing you need to understand about Chase and Megan, the thing I need you to carry away from this video, is that the money was never really the point. The debt was not the disease. The debt was the symptom. The disease was the silence, the performing, the secret keeping, the locked door, the two people who loved each other and had somehow learned to be alone together inside their marriage, carrying separate fears, unable to put them down. What the envelope method gave them was not a financial tool. It gave them a shared language, a regular appointment with honesty, a place to be two people on the same side of the same problem. What rebuilt their marriage was not the zero balance on a credit card. It was the Sunday evenings at the kitchen table. It was the agreement about dignity and autonomy. It was the argument about the beer and sitting on the garage floor together in the dark. It was the choice made and remade every single week for 18 months to face the truth together instead of facing it alone. That is what saved them. Not the method, the willingness. The method was just the door they walked through. But I want to be honest with you because this story isn't over yet and honesty matters. Chase and Megan still have debt. They still have a mortgage. The personal loan will be paid off by the end of the year. They are not wealthy by any conventional definition. Megan started her counseling program, and it is hard and expensive, and some months they have to shuffle the envelopes to make it work. Chase's landscaping business has grown slowly, the way real things grow, not quickly the way fantasies grow. They still have hard months. They still have the occasional Sunday review that turns into an argument. They are not finished. They are not fixed. They are, as Megan now describes it, financially functional and emotionally honest. And to her, that is more than enough. What they have, what they built in 18 months and continue to build, is not a perfect financial life. It is a shared one. And a shared life with all its difficulty and compromise and negotiation is the thing the locked door was keeping them from. That is what prosperity looks like in a marriage, not the number in the account, the conversation about the number, the willingness to have it. Now I want to talk directly to you, not to Chase and Megan. They're in Portugal right now, arguing about whether to try the pastéis de nata at the famous place or the local place, and they're both right and they're both laughing, and they are fine. I want to talk to you. If you watch this entire video, it is because something in this story lives in your life. Maybe you recognize the silence. Maybe you recognize the parking lot moment, the moment when the number on the screen finally made the size of the problem impossible to pretend away. Maybe you recognize the performance of being okay when you are not okay, and the exhaustion of maintaining that performance for someone you love. Here is what I know. You did not come to this video by accident. The specific journey that Chase and Megan took, the foundation of everything they built over those 18 months, began in a single video. The video that taught them the envelope method. The video that showed them they were not alone. The video that proved to them that a couple who had been at the edge of divorce over money could find their way back. That video is called "We Were $127,000 in debt and almost signed the divorce papers. Then we found the envelope method." I need you to watch it. Not because I'm telling you to, because Chase would tell you to, because Megan would grab you by the sleeve and pull you to the screen and say, "This is where it starts, this is where we started." Don't skip this part. In that video, you will find the complete step-by-step walkthrough of the envelope method. Not the overview I gave you today, but the real mechanics. How to build your first budget using this system. How to have the money conversation with your partner when it has been a locked door for years. How to survive the first month, which is the hardest, and the second month, and the month when something breaks and you want to quit. It is the video that, according to two people who were sitting in a Wendy's parking lot in November, changed the course of their marriage. Watch it. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Not after one more episode of something. Tonight. The link is in the description below this video. Click it. Watch it with your partner if you can. If you can't, watch it alone, and then describe what you learned to them over dinner. That is how a conversation begins. And beyond that video, beyond the technique and the steps and the mechanics, I want to invite you to join something. This channel exists because I believe, with everything in me, that the intersection of love and money is not a place of shame. It is a place of transformation. Every couple you will meet in this community, in the comments, in the stories we share, in the videos we make, is at some stage of that transformation. Some are in the parking lot. Some are at month 5. Some have been to Portugal. All of them started exactly where you are right now. Subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell. And not just to get more videos, though you will get more videos, and they will be worth your time. Subscribe because you are making a declaration. You are saying, "I am the kind of person who is willing to learn this. I am the kind of partner who is willing to have this conversation. I am the kind of couple who is going to choose to face this together rather than perform our way through it separately." You are joining a family, a prosperous family. Not prosperous because we all have big bank accounts, though some of us will get there, and we will celebrate together when we do. Prosperous because we have decided that honesty about money is an act of love. Prosperous because we are building real things instead of maintaining beautiful facades. Welcome. You belong here. I want to end with something Chase said to me in the conversation we had after I asked if I could tell his story. I asked him, what is the single thing, not the method, not the budget, the single thing that you would tell a couple sitting in their version of the parking lot right now? He thought about it for a moment. Then he said this: I would tell them that the number on the screen is not the verdict on their marriage. It is just a number. It can change. What can't change, what you can't get back if you lose it, is the willingness to face it with the person next to you. That's the thing to protect, not the credit score, the conversation. He paused. Then he added, and eat the hot food while it's hot. Don't let it go cold while you're sitting there being scared. You can be scared and still eat the food. I have thought about that 100 times since he said it. You can be scared and still eat the food. You can be scared and still open the bank app. You can be scared and still sit down on a Sunday evening and look at the numbers. You can be scared and still say, out loud, to the person you love, I need you to know what's really happening. You can be scared and still begin. The beginning is not the absence of fear. The beginning is the decision to move toward the fear instead of away from it, with the person you chose to face life with beside you. Money will never stop being complicated. Relationships will never stop being complicated. Life will continue to arrive in the form of broken transmissions and unexpected bills and careers that don't pay what you deserve and plans that take longer than you hoped. But the couples who make it, the couples who go from the parking lot to Portugal, from the Sunday night insomnia to the Sunday review, from the locked door to the open conversation, they are not exceptional people. They are not uniquely talented at finance. They do not have advantages that you do not have. They simply made a choice, not a grand dramatic choice, a small, weekly, unglamorous, entirely ordinary choice to sit at the same table and tell each other the truth about where they stood. That is the whole secret. That is the entire thing. Money doesn't buy happiness. But the honest, shared, difficult, loving management of it, together, with someone who trusts you enough to cry in a parking lot and brave enough to build something anyway, that buys the peace that love needs to last. Chase and Megan are proof. And so, soon enough, will you be.